Hi, it's Marisol, your rebel guide to living a life of freedom abroad, bringing you an episode of Roaming the Now, where entrepreneurs, coaches, and mentors come together to give you a behind the scenes look at the real and raw experience of setting out to a new country and building a life and business abroad. If you're curious about your unique personality while living abroad, take the Living Abroad Persona quiz at quiz.connectwithmarisol.com to discover your unique living abroad persona type. Make sure to like and subscribe to Roaming the Now. Enjoy! Hello, and welcome to another episode of Roaming the Now. Today I have Therese Lafleche joining us from France, correct? Specifically where?
So we are in Brittany now. We've been
Okay.
here for for 2 years. Yeah,
Beautiful. And you are originally from Canada, correct?
Canada. Yeah, I've after my first move when I was 17, I got like addicted. So I lived in pretty much every major city in Canada, few areas of France, Germany. Yeah, usually 2 years is my limit of expiration. Everybody says.
Well, that's fair. It does take 2 years to get kind of settled to know it. So I can see where, it makes sense to move abroad from that point, to the next destination. Okay. So, with that being said, me and Tris have a really, really exciting conversation today. Really, more so focusing on how do you plan to move abroad in terms of finding a home, and how can you do that both by visiting or by simply just at home doing that research beforehand. But before we dive into that, I would love for you to share a little bit more about your background before we dive into this fun topic.
So as we mentioned, I mean, I'm Canadian. I did my first move when I was 17. I have moved pretty much every 2 years since. And it was just something that I really fell in love with and got addicted to a bit because, I mean, you've moved quite a bit, so I'm sure you'll agree. You discover things about yourself with every move. You get stronger, you discover more things about the world, and it's just really exciting. I always did work based on how I could get my visa or whatever was offered or available in the place that I wanted to move to. And 2 years ago, I was just kind of done with work. And so now I coach expats and help them do the thing so I can kind of move through them. I can stay at home now and still have that thrill. And it's not work because it's something that I love. So it's the best of all worlds.
Love that. And that's actually really insightful. If you're wanting to move and you're not necessarily maybe wanting to be a full entrepreneur, you can get a visa based on work. So I'm already bringing the advice. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So I know that this is top of mind for us and just kind of what's happening in your world. So I would love for you to share, when you're working with people who desire the expat lifestyle and they're preparing to move and they're starting to look for a home and, where they're going to plant their roots. What is a typical process that you walk people through, both either by, encouraging them to travel or even just at home?
Mhm. I mean, it really depends on financial resources, right? If you can go to the area on your own beforehand and really get a feel for the neighborhoods, a feel for the people, go and visit houses on your own. That's obviously the ideal scene, but it's not a necessary. If you already know the location you want to go to, then there's a lot of research that you can do at home as well. You can start looking at real estate agencies and, a lot of places, every city has their classifieds online or online resources when it comes to real estate and things. So you can kind of get a feel for the price per square meter or square foot, land taxes, things like that. And then you can start asking around as well and just kind of, do research and take notes, in different areas. The land taxes are always going to be different. The price for the house is going to be different. The market trend, is it going up? Is it going down? And so you can do a lot of that research. You can even do virtual visits of houses. You contact the agent and you find out, if they can do a virtual visit. One piece of advice that I have is find out in the country that you want to move to, how do real estate agents operate? Because when I was in Canada or even in the US, listings are shared. And so you can contact one agency and they can tell you everything in the area. Whereas here in France, anyway, everything is exclusive. And so a house for sale is with one agency. And if you contact the wrong agency, you're not going to know. and so you can ask. You can go onto Facebook groups in the country or whatever and just kind of get a feel on how things are done and then start doing your research from there.
Yeah, I would actually just second that, understand how real estate is done in the country because I can actually just share from my experience of being in France and just, there was actually a time of property and realtors and just like rental properties. And I was just like, wow, like things are very different in France compared to like the United States, right? Where like your real estate agent is like on call 24/7 and they're like sending you properties and they're like, we need to make an offer and this versus like even in France or even in Mexico, it's very like, "So can you afford this property? Do you wanna buy it? Yes, no?" It's very, like,
Yeah.
hands off. Your real estate agent is not available 24/7.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up rentals too, because that will vary a lot as well, because the laws in each country are different. And so, because not everybody can afford to buy a house, or not everybody wants to buy a house because maybe they only want to stay 2 years, and it's just not cost effective to buy a house because of all the fees that go along. And so find out as well, like if you are renting, what is included. Like I remember when we rented our first house here in France, we saw this beautiful, it was like a 5 bedroom house. We're going around, I'm falling in love, and I was like, where's the kitchen? Because in Europe, in Germany, it's the same thing. When you rent a house, you have a sink. That's it. There's no countertops, there's no cupboards, there's no anything. You put in your own kitchen. And then sometimes the old renters will sell you the kitchen, or if not, then they take it with them.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me of something. The houses don't come with a plate. You have to bring your own.
Yeah, I mean, for me, furnished was always like with furniture, right? But I mean, unfurnished had fridge, stove, definitely countertops and cupboards. But sometimes there aren't any. Some countries will actually, if you are renting, because you don't have like 3 or 5 years worth of tax returns, they might ask for up to a year's rent as a deposit as well. So there's a lot of things to, just do a little bit of research on.
Yeah. And I'll share just insightfully. I connected with someone who's an expat living in Mexico City, and it turns out like they're actually just subletting from someone who is local to Mexico. But they met that person through like their yoga class, and they were looking for like and I was just like, oh wow, like that actually is like an option, right? Like if you've been maybe hanging out in an Airbnb, for a while, you want to see somewhere, like kind of ask around in like the local spaces that you frequent. Like you never know, it could be the yoga class, it could be the you know um community events that you go to, there could be someone who's looking to sublet, and it's a really, I would say, like less pressure and less like committed way to be able to live somewhere long term and sublet it and just do it month to month and not have to kind of fuss with like the paperwork because there really is a lot more, I would say, more committed logistics when you are going to rent somewhere or buy property, and that is like for me, like buying homes is like, okay, I'm going to settle down for a bit. I don't know, we're gonna be here forever, but I'm gonna settle down and really just like plant some roots. And so on that note, what do you recommend in terms of like navigating people, like the culture? Sorry, that question came out so weird. What do you recommend when it comes to navigating the different cultures of how like real estate is done in different countries?
Yeah, it comes down to research. So whatever you can find online, you can Google search, what the rules are, what the laws are to get a kind of a feel. You can Google the different real estate agencies to get a feel on pricing. Facebook groups are fantastic. Everybody's got an expat group in every state, province, territory, so you can kind of get a feel there too. With Facebook groups, I say take everything with a grain of salt though, because you have a lot of, yeah, people that are there to kind of have a social life and they're very negative. In France anyway, I know that I've had some clients who have gone to like the expat group in France and they come to me and they're like, "Oh my God, but we won't be able to do this and we can't do this." And I'm like, "Yes, you can. I do it all the time." So just take things with a grain of salt as well.
That is very good advice. Yes, it's interesting. Facebook groups, I always, they're very, very helpful. They can be a resource, but sometimes it's very like, discernment. I don't know. This is, that's someone else's experience and
Yeah.
very good solid advice on that note. Okay. So I know you were kind of like sharing with me a little bit around when your clients do go and visit the place, that they're planning to move to and they're just like doing their research. Could you share kind of just like what that actually looks like in action so that if someone did want to plan to like scope out where they're planning to move, they would just like have an idea of what to do?
So this is I'm gonna kind of give you 2 answers. Again, so if you can actually travel to the place, then when you are there, think of what your daily life is going to be, so you can kind of start costing out what your cost of living is gonna be. What is your daily routine? Are you gonna be going to the bakery every day? Are you gonna be going to the restaurants once a week? What kind of restaurants do you go to? So you can kind of price that out. Go to the grocery stores, go to the furniture stores, go to the electronics stores, and usually, I mean, I always recommend staying in an Airbnb because usually the owners are nearby as well. You can usually have a meal with them, find out what their addresses are, and just get out, go to the markets, go for walks, kind of just really immerse yourself into the culture to get a good feel for it. And then for those excuse me, for those that can't actually travel there, definitely do the research as well, though, in terms of the cost of living, because I know a lot of people think if they're moving from the US, they think of healthcare maybe or food and they go, "Oh, life is going to be so cheap in France." But then there's other things that are gonna be more elevated, right? And so, you can go to government sites as well, just get a feel for, like, what are the taxes going to be? If you have children, you know, what kind of school will they go to? Is there public schools and private schools? Do they both have the same reputation? Like here, public schools are very good. However, when there's strikes, which is quite often, especially recently, well, there is no school. So there's, just to really take I mean, you're moving, so you're gonna have a new life and you want a new experience, but certain things are not going to change. And so just really keep in mind those things that aren't going to change. Take a snapshot and just do a price comparison or a feel comparison as well. And that is an excellent way to avoid the culture shock. And this is what I recommend to every one of my clients as well. Because you probably know, I mean, when you move, the first 3 months is the honeymoon phase. Everything is new and exciting, and it's just the best place in the world. And then you realize, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I can't eat that anymore. I miss this. I miss that. And the culture shock starts to hit in. And so if you do research beforehand, you can avoid that. So families that are coming from the US or Canada, I tell them like start eating your meals a little later. If you're used to eating dinner at 5, start eating at 5:30 and then at 6 and then at 6:30. So by the time you get to France and you're eating at 8 o'clock, it's normal. That's one less thing to get over. Right. And there's a lot of little things like that that you can do. If you're moving to France, don't show up early. Start getting used to showing up on time and then start showing up a little late.
It's so true. Even here in Mexico, like I'm actually been catching myself on that. Like, oh, okay, and no, just because everyone else is showing up 30 minutes late doesn't mean I need to. Like 15 minutes is like a good mid ground. It's like for social functions here, it's like 15 minutes. Or even if I know they say it starts at 12, like it doesn't start at 12. It starts at like 12:15, you know?
Yeah.
But it's very different, right? Because, my clients, everything being in the United States mainly, as well as some people sprinkle out internationally. Like I maintain my punctuality though. So it's very different, the duality of honoring the time zone that you live in and understanding how it works, but also like you kind of have your own internal time zone that you honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and then there's this little cultural like, what do you talk about? Right? Like, I mean, most places talking politics or religion is taboo. In France, they love to debate. Like, it's like we've had 5 revolutions here, right? And so that's not taboo at all. Like, you go for it and you talk about it and it's expected, but you don't talk about money, whereas other cultures will talk about money. And so these are little things that you can research, bedtime reading.
Bedside reading to prepare for when you move. So
Well, it's perfect bedtime too because it's the last thing you think of, and then you're dreaming of your new location, putting it
yes,
there first.
no, it is honestly, it's perfect. I did a bit of reading. I think now I do a lot more reading around, um, like where I do a lot more reading on cultural events that are happening in Mexico or just like kind of cultural things.
Mhm.
You know, the news is not really my thing, but I'm aware of things. But I do spend a lot more time being aware of like culturally what is happening or like shifts.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's just really important to be aware of.
Mhm.
But on that note, being that you help people, you work with your clients, help them plan their move abroad, it would be really helpful if you kind of just shared like what is the most like common like inner block or like inner challenge you see come up for people when they're planning to make this move.
There's actually so I always say that there's 3 phases of expat life, and there's actually a block in each phase. So the first phase is making that decision and then announcing it. And where the biggest challenge comes is when it gets shared with somebody. Because now you have somebody else's, "Oh, this isn't a good idea, it's not responsible." I mean, I've done 29 moves, I've got years and years of considerations from others. They always come they're always well-meaning, but a lot of times people will go like, "Oh, that's right. Oh, I'll wait." Or they'll put it off because they don't want to feel like they're abandoning a family member or something like that. Um, and so for them, I say communication is key. When you tell somebody I'm moving to another continent or something, they don't know the thought process that you went through. They don't know the research that you have done. And so it's easy for them to react and be concerned for you. So kind of take them through your process so that they know it's a well thought out decision and that you would just appreciate their support. The second phase is getting ready for the move, packing and actually doing the move. Now is when the self sabotage usually comes in because you're getting out of your comfort zone. And even if it's something that you've been wanting to do for a long time and you're excited about, subconsciously, you start to make mistakes, lose things, and do these little self sabotage things in order to keep yourself in the comfort zone. And so that, I mean, you have to be very alert to what you are doing, organized. I tell people, I mean, in my program, I have like to-do lists from 6 to 8 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, and everything as a guideline for them. And then I say, like, anytime something comes up in your mind, you put it on the appropriate list, and then you have 3 things per day so that you avoid the overwhelm. You avoid, getting dispersed and then forgetting key things and things like that. So organization and being alert to yourself is key. And then once you move, as I mentioned, I mean, there's that honeymoon phase, and then afterwards, it's there's like a fork in the road. Do I stay and confront this, or do I go home and back to my comfort zone? And there, it's really the key is to make the new area home as soon as possible. There's integration, which can take time, but there's things that you can do immediately to make it feel like home. And it can be little things like little mementos as decor in the house, having appeasing colors that remind you of home in the house. Going out and talking to the neighbors and getting some sort of social circle, getting habits right away. If you go to the bakery, go to the same one every single morning so that you get those contacts and familiar faces right off the get-go. And then it feels a little bit more secure.
Yeah, that's really insightful and really helpful. And I realize that like I actually have done that. Like when I find the bakery or something when I'm traveling or something that I really like, I frequent it often. You know, I find the place that I really like. Obviously really easy when you're in France because everything's beautiful. But there were like specific, like, when I think back to the time that I was spending there earlier, I'd have my familiar like paths that I would take, and I knew that like this road was this, and I could find the bakery that I liked here, or I could find the place where I really like to get, like a bag, baguette, just like things.
Yeah.
I really think like I really did create a sense of familiarity. Even now moving here, when I first got here, there were like places that I really liked to like buy food or just to buy like just really small things, but
Mhm.
creating that habit and that sense of familiarity really does help you with the integration process. And then people get to know your face and then
Yeah.
they see you, and then you start to build, connections and relationships. So it's really, really insightful, and I really love how you're able to break it up with conversations. You are correct. Someone who's good with that, there's always the outside opinions. Then it comes to, oh, I'm preparing for this. Oh, am I really doing this? And then the self sabotage. And then once you get there, it really is, okay, I'm here. I did it. I moved past the outside opinions. I moved past my own my own things. So now how do I integrate? So super duper um, helpful and insightful, and just really clearly laid out. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
Is
you're
there
so welcome.
any yeah, is there any piece of advice that you would want to give to anyone who's maybe kind of dancing with the idea of expat life that you feel would be really helpful for them?
Don't wait. Don't wait. I have one client who we started working together in November. She and her husband had decided in 2005 they were moving. And then he got a promotion. So they put it off. And then she got pregnant. They put it off. And then there was illness in the family. It got put off, put off, put off, put off. And we started working together in, I forget with them now. It was November or January. And they just recently moved. But it was the self-sabotage was extreme then. And when I sat her down and I was like, what is going on? She said, like, it went from this goal or this, like, this is the plan to, okay, this is the dream to it's a fantasy, right? And life is always going to happen. It's going to happen whether you're in your home city or whether you're abroad. And so don't wait for anything because life's not going to wait for you. And you don't know. I mean, we all evolve, so if you want to move to Mexico right now, then do it now. Because in 5 years, you might have an opportunity to go to, I don't know, Argentina. And you're going to be in Argentina going, oh, I never got to make it to Mexico. Right. So no regrets.
Yeah, definitely. There's no time like the present. And if there's something that I learned, there really is like no such thing as being ready. We simply just decide when we're ready to do something. We commit to like, I'm going to learn as I do it along the way. Like when I reflect on any of my moves, was I ready to move to San Francisco alone at 19? No, but I did it and I learned. Was I ready, to then again move back home? No, but I did. There
Yeah.
was just more the I am committing to
Hmm.
learning and doing the thing. But there was
Yep.
never a moment where I've made any decision where I was like, yes, I am completely prepared and ready. That just doesn't
Hmm.
really happen.
And we're going to make mistakes. Right. So you learn from those mistakes and you just keep in mind that nothing is ever forever. And so if you decide that, no, this isn't the place for me, you're not stuck there for the rest of your life. If you move there, you can move away too.
That's why I always that's like the mindset that I've always had. I
A
said,
good one.
"Oh, okay." Like when I was moving to San Francisco and everyone, because it was my first move and I was young and everyone was like, "Oh, like how could you?" It's so, and I said, "Listen, if it doesn't work out, I can go back home or I can move somewhere else. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Not like the decisions you make are not permanent." And I think that people get really stuck in that, right? Like if I make this decision, then I to be this, like, where I have to live here forever. And I'm like, "But you don't. Like, you can move again, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the world is really big."
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing to, I was going to say, I mean, COVID is over now, but even when we moved from Germany to France, it was during the first COVID. And the borders, I mean, we moved, the borders were closed. So anything is possible. I mean, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight and wisdom on expat lifestyle as well as just moving and, the logistics and planning for that. Anyone wants to get in contact with you, what is the best
So I'm assuming that the website is going to be joined to this, but it's Passport Lifestyles, plural, .fr for France. And my contact information and everything is there.
Beautiful. Okay, I will make sure to add your website link in the description. And until then, thank you all for tuning in. And this is your host, Marisol, signing off of another episode of Roaming the Now. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching this episode of Roaming the Now. If you have not already, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to discover your unique personality while living abroad, visit quiz.connectwithmarisol.com. And as always, wherever you are in the world, I hope you are enjoying Roaming the Now.